This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. What a week it has been. Completely exhausted and so glad that it's Friday. This woman that we're calling Meghan Markle is such a fraud, and anyone that collaborates or teams up with her, you have to question, what's your deal? Are you stupid? How are you getting sucked into going along with this con? I just don't understand it. So today or yesterday, Meghan shows up at Godmother's bookstore, the bookstore that her friends in California who have something going on there. Anyway, she shows up to sit down. I don't even know exactly what it is that she was there for. I don't care. However, I've seen some of these clips, and let me tell you, one of these clips really pissed me off. So apparently this woman that Meghan is with is allegedly a college friend of hers. I don't buy it for 1 second.
Not only did we go to college together, we were in the same sorority together, we were meant to drive from LA to Chicago to go back to school 1 year.
No, we were meant to fly.
Yes, we were meant to fly.
We were gonna fly. Yes.
But no, here's why we didn't. Because 9/11 happened on that same day. And so the two of us ended up driving 30 hours over 3 days, 10 hours a day from Los Angeles to Chicago together at one of the most fragile, tender times in this country.
I call bullshit on this story, and it goes to show you what kind of person this Courtney Adamo, who is some influencer on TikTok or Instagram, whatever, same age or approximately the same age as Meghan, decide to take the tragic events of 9/11 for their story. I'm disgusted that there are people just like Meghan Markle who are willing to exploit a tragedy in order to lift themselves up.
Not only did we go to college together, we were in the same sorority together, we were meant to drive from LA to Chicago to go back to school 1 year.
No, we were meant to fly.
Yes, we were meant to fly.
We were gonna fly. Yes.
But no, here's why we didn't. Because 9/11 happened.
What is there to smile about, Meghan? Using this tragedy to enhance your story because your life is so fucking boring and you have no friends that you have to pretend you have friends? Let me go ahead and tell you why this story doesn't wash. Someone is lying again, which gives more fuel to the fire that Meghan has been lying about everything.
On that same day. And so the two of us ended up driving 30 hours over 3 days, 10 hours a day from Los Angeles to Chicago together at one of the most fragile, tender times in this country.
So Meghan essentially wants to make it look like she was saved because she was supposed to fly that day from Los Angeles. Now, let's remember where those airplanes were going and coming from, okay? So she wants to associate herself as being one who was saved, okay? Essentially. September 11th, they start driving for 3 days. So you've got September 12th, September 13th, they're arriving on Northwestern campus, allegedly. This is the story that she wants us suckers to believe. I can't get over how Meghan is associating herself with 9/11 now. You are disgusting. In fact, both of you are disgusting for exploiting this. Back in 2001, you see, Kappa Kappa Gamma had a scheduled move-in from September 7th through the 9th. Why would you have booked a flight on a Tuesday, September 11th, when the window to move in was on September 7th, 8th, and 9th, Meghan? You see, Meghan can't let a good tragedy go to waste, and she has to make it about her. But here is where she's going to now look so stupid, because by doing this, she now has opened up Pandora's box for everybody to now revisit the story about Argentina. Shall we go back in time and revisit the video that I did a few months ago, squashing this whole entire story? I think we should. Now, before I go ahead and play this, I just want to remind everybody that For Tom Bauer's book Revenge, he interviewed Samantha Markle and Thomas Markle Sr. Blew up. So now we go to Tom Bauer's Revenge, and this is where Tom Bauer interviewed Thomas Markle Sr., of which the story of Argentina has Meghan going to Argentina in her second year, sophomore year, which would place her in 2001. And if you go by the Northwestern academic calendar, second year would have started in September of 2001. Now, what major event happened in 2001? 9/11. So Meghan was going into her second year, which would put her in after 9/11. So honestly, anybody believe that she was traveling and going abroad? Abso-fucking-lutely not. So if Meghan was traveling around in Europe or wherever the fuck she was, I call bullshit. The story doesn't wash from head to toe because when you look at Uncle Mike or Uncle Mick, whatever his name is, he worked for the State Department and allegedly CIA. He would have known about the economic turmoil that was going on in Argentina and would have advised against it if, indeed, Uncle Mick, Uncle Mike existed and was Meghan's uncle. He would have said, no, I don't advise going down to Argentina right now because it's not really safe. We are having a bit of difficulty right now with our relationship between the United States and Argentina, especially since they cut the visas off for students. There was a lot going on between the United States and Argentina that it wouldn't have been wise for Meghan to go during that time. But, no mention of that. Aside from, she's got protection around her, which, when you look at the various versions, on one point, Samantha's like, if anything happened, Uncle Mike would just pick up the phone and make a phone call. Like, come on now. Like, this is so ridiculous at this point when, I'm talking about this out loud. I can't believe all of us fell for this shit. And knowing how pretentious Meghan is, do you honestly think that Meghan would have gone to a country where there was a potential for her to get kidnapped? No way. This was the actual climate and the reality of what was happening in Argentina at that time.
Promises of first world stability and affluence proved an illusion. By December 2001, recession and growing social unrest provoked a financial crisis. The government froze all deposit and savings accounts.
There will be no devaluation. The peso will remain equal to the dollar and fully convertible. We have defeated the speculators. All depositors' money is safe.
The government fell when the police killed 27 people in 2 days of rioting. The political and financial crisis continued.
Let's take the bull by the horns.
Either Meghan's seriously unhinged and we've all failed miserably as a society to get her help, or the puppet masters behind her orchestrated this whole copycat charade, not just to entrap Harry, but also to keep people talking to eventually serve some shady next level scheme. Whatever it is, it's turned out to be a complete mess. Was the whole idea to morph into the next Diana just a clever way to unlock doors across the Commonwealth and push some hidden agenda? Maybe, but we really don't know. Whatever the plan, it's only managed to make Meghan come across as deeply troubled. When you trace how this Diana connection started gaining this momentum, it's funny how Andrew Morton rarely comes up in the conversation. Maybe that's because his book on Meghan dropped back in 2018 when people weren't dissecting Meghan's every move like they are now. At the time, some whispered that Morton might have had direct contact with Meghan, something Morton brushed off several times in interviews. But then again, Omid Scobie also swore up and down he had no involvement with her for Finding Freedom. And we all know how that turned out. A complete total lie. So it's not exactly a leap to think Meghan could have had a hand in Morton's book. After all, Morton famously downplayed his direct role with Diana at first, only for us to later learn he was in deep with Diana. And since Meghan's made it her mission to mirror every single thing about Diana, Would it really be that shocking if Meghan or her team tapped Morton to pen that first glowing intro to Meghan Markle and set the stage for the avalanche of contradictions and shaky narratives that followed? I think it's something that we should start thinking about. In Chapter 4, titled, Can You Say Hi?, Morton writes, by the start of her junior year, it was clear that if Meghan continued at her current pace, she would earn most of her credits for her degree way ahead of schedule. Because Meghan is a genius, right? Just for fun, she took a course in industrial engineering, her professor choosing the French classic Le Petit Prince par Antoine de Saint-Exupéry as a set text. As she later wrote in her blog, The Tig, it was a seemingly odd choice, but at the end of the day, the takeaway was a self-empowerment and motivational bent that I apply to decision-making in my life to this very day. With time on her side and still unsure about her path after university, she decided to go into the field to gain some practical experience in international relations. She knew that her uncle, Mick Markle, was employed as a specialist in communication systems for the U.S. government. The talk in the family was that he worked for the CIA, the government's overseas spying arm. So she approached him to ask for his help in getting her an internship abroad with the State Department. Meghan, I will help you if I can, he replied. Help her he did. Uncle Mick pulled a few strings, and even though Meghan was quite late in submitting the application paperwork, that was overlooked because of her excellent academic record and her uncle's influence. Soon after, she was informed that she had secured a 6-week internship as a junior press officer at the American Embassy in Buenos Aires, Argentina. It was quite the adventure for the 20-year-old, flying from Los Angeles to Buenos Aires on her own. She joined a team of around 28 State Department officials and guards in the mid-size American enclave. Before starting work, she was given an orientation of the building complex and the city, safety being the primary focus. The young student was warned about where to avoid, what to do in an emergency, and which telephone numbers to call. Basic but vital information. With the anniversary of 9/11 approaching, all American embassies around the world, including that in Buenos Aires, had been placed on Code Orange security, the second highest level. For the most part, her day-to-day life was the routine and mundane world of the office grunt, filing, answering phones, and drafting letters. As a consummate team player, she impressed her superiors with her enthusiasm and demeanor. She was a willing worker, undertaking the tedious, run-of-the-mill jobs quickly and efficiently. Her superior, Mark Krishik, now retired, remembered her as a young woman who was good to work with and who carried out her assignments with efficiency and ingenuity. Though memories are hazy, there was talk of a dalliance with a U.S. Marine tasked with guarding the embassy compound, and an Argentinian businessman who sent his chauffeur-driven limousine to take her out for dinner. There were even reports of a Buenos Aires clairvoyant who, it later emerged, had conveniently described her marrying a man with curly red hair. As it was her 21st birthday on August 4, 2002, she was given permission to travel in the convoy that was picking up the U.S. Finance Secretary Paul O'Neill, who was paying a whistle-stop visit to South America. It was a treat. However, her opportunity to be treated like a VIP for an hour or two rapidly turned into a terrifying ordeal. She was waiting in the motorcade when Secretary O'Neill landed at Ezeiza International Airport, 15 miles outside the center of Buenos Aires. Argentina had recently defaulted on a $141 billion debt, and neither the International Monetary Fund nor the American government were in any mood to bail them out. Before he left Washington, D.C., O'Neill had announced that South American nations would have policies in place to ensure that aid is not diverted to Swiss bank accounts. Though his target was the corrupt political elites, siphoning off billions of dollars into their own personal bank accounts, the suffering man and woman in the street blamed the United States for the economic calamity that had befallen them. After he landed at precisely 5 o'clock, O'Neill's motorcade drove to a meeting with President Eduardo Dualde, head of the interim government. Though O'Neill was expecting a bumpy ride, even he was perturbed when banner-waving demonstrators surrounded the convoy. I remember the arrival because protesters banged on my limo with their placards. It was a memorable event, he later deadpanned. The junior press officer was terrified, recalling that it was the scariest moment of her life. It was all the more concerning, not only because of the impending anniversary of 9/11, but because of intelligence reports suggesting that Islamic militants could be setting up a network in South America. Meghan would have already been wary, and it's easy to imagine how frightening she would have found an angry mob of protesters attacking her car. However, the experience didn't seem to put her off pondering her future inside the government agency. If she had stayed with the State Department, she would have been an excellent addition to the U.S. diplomatic corps. She had all that it takes to be a successful diplomat, Mark Krishek later recalled. Certainly, she was sufficiently committed to a career with the State Department to take the Foreign Service Officer test while she was still in Argentina. The 3-hour exam is a mix of politics, history, general knowledge, and maths, requiring an awareness of everything from the origin of bebop to East Asian labor laws. It proved a stretch too far. Meghan, much to her disappointment, failed the exam. She did, though, fly to Madrid to take a 6-week course in Spanish on the International Education for Students program. It was an added string to her bow just in case she wanted to give the world of diplomacy another try. When she returned to Northwestern, she was able to regale her friends with tales of tapas and tango and tried to brush off her regret over missing the mark on her Foreign Service officer tests. In any case, fate, it would seem, was pushing her into the world of entertainment. Her lighting director father pulled favors to put her forward for a casual role in General Hospital, just as he had done with the eldest daughter almost a decade earlier. In November 2002, Meghan auditioned for a day player role in which she said around 5 lines. Thanks to her father's influence, she got the part of a nurse named Jill. The episode aired just before Thanksgiving. A few weeks later, she was at a holiday party with friends when she was approached by a man who introduced himself as Drew. Instead of wanting to date her, he wanted to manage her. A friend had slipped him a copy of a student film in which Meghan had appeared, and he was impressed, calling Meghan to tell her, "You know what? You're going to make money, and I'll take 10%. I think you should stick around." But at that time in her life, Meghan couldn't stick around. She had courses to finish back at Northwestern and a graduation to attend. As she saw it, as one door had closed, another one had opened. If the State Department didn't want her, maybe Hollywood did. And there you have it, folks. That's Andrew Morton's version of Meghan's time in Argentina. So now, when we stop and think about the amount of versions we have, I'm counting at least 6 different versions of Meghan's time down in Argentina. Did she go down there for a month, according to Samantha in her book? Did she go down there for a couple months to intern, according to Meghan in her recent With Love, Meghan? Did she go down there to work with the United States Embassy? Or did she go over on a work abroad, study abroad program, as Samantha suggested in her recent interview? Did Meghan go to Spain right after that for another 6 weeks? If so, how is it that she was able to get back in time to do this audition for General Hospital? Another thing that I want to point out is in Samantha's book, after she's talking about Uncle Mike getting her this internship and Meghan was being so ungrateful that she didn't even thank her father or Uncle Mike, Mick, whatever his name is, she writes here in this last paragraph, she goes, "Since I was writing a 200-page paper and I was exhausted, I would have gladly traded places with her, but I doubted she would have wanted to trade places with me. She seemed like she was exhilarated. When she got back to her apartment, I knew that she had been through a whirlwind experience, and the return to Los Angeles would seem boring compared to what she had just experienced. Within a week, I got a call from her, and she was feeling somewhat depressed. I had no idea what she could feel that way about, because she just had an incredible experience. I was concerned because she didn't seem like herself, and I thought she would call Nikki when she was depressed, rather than me. She's my sister, so I was open to whatever she needed. She said she was having headaches to go with it all. I thought that was probably because of such a contrast between the excitement of being in Argentina and being back in Los Angeles without a lot going on. She didn't tell me if it had anything to do with a relationship or not, and I didn't pry because I knew that it was her business and she would tell me whatever she wanted to. The devil is in the details, folks, and this is where the whole entire story collapses. So if, let's say, we give the benefit of the doubt, Meghan was on this convoy on her birthday, August 4, 2002, as Andrew Morton says, and she was there for 6 weeks. Now, the problem with this story and why it's getting so difficult to believe that Meghan even went to Argentina is the shifting of the timelines. So when we look at when Meghan went down there, nobody can actually pinpoint exactly when Meghan went there to start this so-called internship and when she actually left. I mean, at this moment in time, I don't see any kind of documentation that she was really there, aside from all these various stories that were being told. The only date that we have to go on right now is that August 4th, 2002. So if Meghan was literally going into her junior year, then Tom Bower's version of it that he got from Thomas Markle Sr. of Meghan going in her sophomore year falls flat. If we are to go along with this timeline, then also with Samantha, when you're looking at this August time frame, if Meghan, let's say, was there for a month, that would bring her into September. So here is the actual Northwestern academic year for 2002-2003. As you can see, if Meghan went off to Argentina, spent a month there, got back in the month of September, she would have had to have gone to Illinois, because that's where Northwestern is. What is she doing in LA with her own apartment? Okay, so now let's put Samantha Grant or Yvonne M. Hale, whatever her name is, to the side. Let's look at Andrew Morton. If we take at face value that Andrew Morton is telling us that Meghan went to Spain right after for another 5-6 weeks, this would put Meghan smack dab in the middle of fall semester. So when would Meghan have gone back to LA to audition and film for General Hospital and then fly back to Illinois to complete finals in that window of time? The actual episode that Meghan was in for General Hospital with those 5 lines aired on November 14, 2002. So the question is, when did Meghan actually audition for it, then actually be in LA to film it, when she was supposed to be either in Spain or in Chicago, finishing or going through her junior year? So now this puts into question Meghan's attendance at Northwestern, which I've said in the past that I don't believe, and I've given my reasons and evidence as to why I don't believe Meghan graduated from Northwestern, because now you're looking at this. How could Meghan be in 2 places at once? Not only to audition and do this General Hospital, but be off into Spain or in Chicago. And then you have Samantha in her book saying that right after Argentina, she came back to LA twiddling her thumbs, depressed. The story doesn't wash. And neither does Andrew Morton's story, because if Meghan was given this VIP treatment on her birthday, August 4, 2002, and being there for the arrival of the Secretary of Treasury, Paul O'Neill, then that's impossible, because Secretary O'Neill didn't arrive in Argentina until August 6, 2002. And I'll tell you this, I highly doubt that Meghan was in the same Suburban as this guy, because it was one Suburban with cop cars. And what was attacked was his Suburban. Meghan was not there, especially if they're saying that this took place on August 4, 2002. It's impossible. Paul O'Neill flew in on the 6th, and the protests and the attacks didn't happen until the 7th. So how can they say that Meghan was in the car going to the airport to get him? That's impossible. Never happened. Don't you see how that whole story just blew up? And now Meghan's saying that she was in a car with this woman, Courtney Adamo, driving on 9/11 to Northwestern University. So which is it, Meghan? Were you going to Buenos Aires? Did you go to Buenos Aires? Were you going to Northwestern? Did you ever go to Northwestern? Now, I looked through this photo and I couldn't find a sorority girl that looked like Courtney Adamo. The closest one would be this one, and that looks nothing like the woman that is sitting next to Meghan. It's interesting that this woman has a biography, but does not include the school that she went to in Chicago. Even though it said that she went to school for journalism, there is no mention of Northwestern, nor is there any mention of her being part of Kappa Kappa Gamma. So, until the algorithm gets reset by all of Meghan's propaganda, there's nothing that I had found. So now we're opening up another can of worms, questioning again, did Meghan really go to Northwestern, or was this the work of the deep state or some intelligence agency giving a substantial donation to the university to place just enough information to make it believable that Meghan was there, but not really? Or, do we question, did Meghan really go to Argentina? That's also another area that nobody seems to want to touch, but I've laid it out for everybody here. During that time, it was a very sensitive time. So if Uncle Mike really did exist and he really did work for the State Department and the CIA, then he would have told her that she shouldn't have gone for those 2 years. Like, her years do not flush out. So now this stunt that she pulls with a woman that I highly doubt knows Meghan. I think they just met on the stage and this was the story that they came up with. Notice how they were like, yeah, we were supposed to fly. Remember, Meghan? This was the story that we agreed upon before we got onto the stage. That's what it looked like. And for them to use 9/11 again is vile and disgusting. And anybody, we go back to anyone that's associating or makes the decision to collaborate or be near Meghan Markle. What does that say about you? And that's where I'll leave it here. But, shame on this woman, using that tragedy to promote yourself. Gross. Anyhow, that's all I have today. Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.